Evening chanting, page 14. यो सो भगवा अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो स्वाखातो येन भगवता धम्मो सुपटिपन्नो यस्य भगवतो सावक संघो तमयं भगवन्तं सधम्मं ससङ्गम् इमे हि सकारि
Mobile device not found. Ready to pair.
आरोपिते हि अभिपूजयामः साधुनो भन्ति भगवा शुचिरपरिनिभूतोऽपि पश्चिमा जनतानुकम्पमानसा इमे सकारे दुर्गतकारभूते पटिगणातु अम्हाकं दीघरतं हिताय सुखाय अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो भगवा बुद्धं भगवन्तं अभिवादेमि स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मं नमस्सामि सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो संघं आनंदमयं बुद्धस्य भगवतो उद्भावनमकारं करोमि नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स आनंदमयं बुद्धानुसतिनयं करोमि तं कोपन भगवन्तं एवं कल्याणो इति सदो अभुद्गतो इति पिसो भगवा अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो विद्याचरण संपन्नो सुगतो लोकविदु अनुत्तरो पुरुषधम्मसारथि सत्ता देव मनुस्सान् बुद्धो भगवाति अन्वयं बुद्धाभिगीतिं करोमि बुद्धवारहन्तवरता द्विगुणाभियुतो शुद्धाभियान करुणा हि समागततो बोधेसियो सुजनतं कमलं वसुरो वन्दामहं तमर्णं शिरसा जिनेन्दं बुद्धो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं पठमानुसतिष्ठानं वन्दामि तं शिरेणं बुद्धस्साहस्मिदासीव बुद्धो मे सामिकेश्वरो बुद्धस्सहं नियादिमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीहं चरिस्सा बुद्धस्यैव सुबोधितम् नत्ति मे शरणम् अन्यं बुद्धो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सज्जवज्जेन वड्डेयं चतुशासने बुद्धं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं पशुतं इद सव्येऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेषु तस्य तेजसा खण्डमयं धम्मानुसतिनयं करोमसि स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मो सन्दिट्ठिको अकालिको एहि पस्सिको ओपनयिको पच्यत्तं वेदितव्यो विन्युहीति खण्डमयं धम्माभिगीतिं करोमसि स्वाखाततादिगुणयोगवसेन सेयो यो मग्गपाकपरित्तिविमोक्षभेदो धम्मो कुलोकपतन तदधारिधारी वन्दामहं तमरं वरधम्ममीतं धम्मो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं द्वितीयानुसतिष्ठान् वन्दामि तं शिरेण धम्मस्सास्मि दासीव धम्मो मे सामितिस्सरो धम्मस्सहं नियादीनि शरीरं जीवितं चिदम् वन्दन्ति यं चरिस्सा धम्मस्यैव सुधम्मकम् नत्ति मे शरणम् अन्य धम्मो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सज्जवज्जेन वड्डेयं चतुशासने धम्मं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं पशुतं इद सव्येऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेषु तस्य तेजसा खण्डमयं सङ्घानुसतिनयं करोमसि सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो सामीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो यदिदं चत्तारि पुरुषयुगान् अट्ठपुरुषपुङ्गला एष भगवतो सावकसङ्घो आहुनेयो पाहुने दक्षिणेयो अञ्जलिकरणे अनुत्तरं पुण्यखेतं लोकसाति खण्डमयं सङ्गाभिगीतिं करोमसि सधम्मजो सुपटिपतिगुणादियुतो यो अट्ठविधो अरियपुङ्गलसङ्घसेठो शीलादिधम्मपवराशयकाय चित्तो वन्दामहं तमरियागणं सुशुद्धं सङ्घो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं तदीयानुसतिष्ठान वन्दामि तं शिरेण सङ्घस्सास्मि दासीव सङ्घो मे सामिकिस्सरो संघासहं नियादे शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीहं चरिस्सां संघस्सु पटिपन्नतं नत्ति मे शरणम् अन्यं संगो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सज्जवज्जेन वड्ढेयं सत्तु शासने संघं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं प्रसुतम् इद सभ्येऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेषु तेजसा। आपसे हिंदी थी बात
साथ साथ ही है ना इसमें।
हाँ?
इसमें तो साथ साथ है।
पेज 41 बार बार अनुस्मरणीय 5 विषय हंदमयम अभिन्न पंचवेखन पाठम भणामसे। आए हम बार बार विवेचन योग्य पाठ करें। जरा धम्मोमी जरम अनतीतो, मैं जरा धर्मा हूँ, मैंने जरा को पराजित नहीं किया है। व्याधि धम्मोमी व्याधि अनतीतो, मैं व्याधि धर्मा हूँ, मैंने व्याधि को पराजित नहीं किया है। मरण धम्मोमी मरणम अनतीतो, मैं मरण धर्मा हूँ, मैंने मृत्यु को पराजित नहीं किया है। सभ्ये ही में पिए ही मनापे नाना भावो बिना भावो, सभी मेरे प्रिय मुझे प्रसन्नता देने वाले मुझसे दूर हो जाएंगे, बिछुड़ जाएंगे। कम्मस्य कोमि कम्म दायादा कम्म योनि कम्म बंधु कम्म पटि शरणो यम कम्मं करिष्यामि कल्याणं वा पापकं वा तस्य दायादो भविष्यामि। मैं अपने कर्मों का स्वामी हूँ, कर्मों का उत्तराधिकारी हूँ। कर्म ही मेरी योनि है, कर्म ही मेरा बंधु है, कर्म ही मेरी शरण है। मैं जो भी कर्म करूँगा, कल्याणकारी या पापकारी, उसका उत्तराधिकारी बनूंगा। एवं अम्मे ही अभिन्नम पंचवेकतव्यम, इस प्रकार हमें बार बार विवेचन करना चाहिए।
Connected to 1+3G.
So I'd like to extend my appreciation for last week and the book signing and just the joy I felt in sharing something that I think is very important and hoping that it finds a home in your heart. I was teaching at IMS last week or sometime. I can't really remember anymore, but recently. And as the retreat was unfolding, my talks were around selflessness, and I told them I was a one-note Dharma teacher, which is true. And I said, that one note, some of you will take it and feel very distraught and feel as if you're not doing what you need to do, or feel defenseless in the face of what you need to do, or just simply feel incompetent in being able to move this thing forward. I said that will be a smaller percentage, but there will be a number of you that will have that reaction. And then some of you will feel that there's a challenge that's being offered here, that there is that something is being pointed towards that is very available to everyone, depending upon how we practice, and that with slight modifications in the way we do practice, we can move in the direction of the intended fruit of Buddhism. And I don't know, and I said to them, I don't know which component, which percentage you're in. And sure enough, I got numerous notes from the people who were distraught, and often encouraging notes from those who feel it is a challenge. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that it feels to me to be so important in our time on earth that we change paradigms, that we come into a new sense of awakening, that we can't maintain and use the spiritual traditions of the past for further self-development, that they have to be seen as changing paradigms from self to selflessness. And that what we've mostly been doing over the last hundreds of years is actually using these paradigms, these traditions, to strengthen the paradigm we're in and to move us with some sense of self-acclaim and modest arrogance towards what we think is its completion. And in fact, nothing really changes at all, except it gets embroiled in a tradition, feels arcane, and you can feel that it's just been so much it's been elaborated on and commented on over the years that it's hard to dust it off and see anything new about it. But something radically different needs to happen. And that's what I mean by being a one-note Dharma teacher, is that I'm not going to be able to switch back into the old paradigm on you. And perhaps you don't want me to, but some of you probably do. And I willingly and with great appreciation recommend teachers that will strengthen that old paradigm for you and allow you to move forward in that. Because oftentimes we have to strengthen that old paradigm sufficiently to even want to change. And some of us perhaps haven't done sufficient strengthening of our sense of self before we can even look and see whether this is a self that, what this self is that we are strengthening. So there's usefulness in the old paradigm, but ultimately it doesn't move us any closer to the radical shift that's needed to carry this species forward in time. So that's why I wrote the book. And the talk tonight is a different subject but the same topic. And I hope you'll see how these two fit together, because we're on the Satipatthana Sutta, and the Buddha has very gently brought us to this place. He's done it over a series of passages in which he's encouraged different ways of looking and seeing the body, seeing it in light of what it is, or what we believe it to be based upon our knowledge and our memory and our image, and seeing what it is that when we release that knowledge and image, what's there, what's left. Where are the boundaries when we no longer impose those conceptual boundaries upon ourselves? What does it feel like inside? What's the living experience of that? So he's taken us through that. But he, in perhaps his wisdom, feels that that sense of me reclaiming its position within our image is very quickly reasserted. And so now he's bringing out the big guns. He wanted to show us in the next series of passages how the body is or can be perceived as being repulsive, instead of just being delighted in, beautified, attractive in the way this culture does it, that there's also a repulsive side to it, and he uses very down-to-earth expressions to show us that. And then he says, okay, well, that's not enough. He says there's still some clinging of self to body. He says, so let's talk about what my nieces say is the D word. Rodney's using the D word again, which is death. So he brings on this subject, and this is the second talk from this topic. There'll be one final talk that concludes the whole of the body, and that'll be on the 24th when I come back. But this is really the final talk on death and the body. And it's what he's doing, I think, is he's showing us a starting place. He's giving us motivation to move and change paradigms. Essentially, he switched paradigms very early on. He ventures out of his castle walls with his charioteer, and he sees a variety of different dying people, ill people. He sees a monk, and he sees aging people. And it was a time of his life when it makes an imprint. There's an awakening that happens to him. And that moment in which he sees this as happening to him is his realization of death, is his absolute realization of death. That moment of realization of death may or may not have happened to you. It needs to happen before we die, because you won't take this seriously. You won't want to. Why would you want to change paradigms if the dream you're in, if the altered consciousness of your egoic state, that sense of subject and object, things being isolated from you, is working perfectly for you? But it can only work for you without any confusion as long as we deny the fact that there's an ending to this. Because any dream state, any state that we are conjuring up within perception that is falsely being perceived, which is what this state we're in, this old paradigm is, has a flaw. How can a dream not have a flaw? It has a flaw. No, there are many flaws in this particular dream, but one of the most startling is that right in front of our eyes, things are arising and passing away, that they aren't lasting. And we hadn't counted on that in our dream. And so we can invest an awful lot of energy in not seeing that, and denying that, and just looking at the beautification of life, looking at the autumn without thinking of the winter, looking at the spring without thinking in terms of its ending, looking at ourselves in our youth without reflecting upon the aging process. But there's a flaw, and this flaw often comes rather dramatically. In fact, one person, a number of people I see, tell me that they've been practicing a number of years in private conversation, and they say, my sister just died, or my parents just died, or even my child died. And I say to myself, what's the use now in meditating? What's the point? What's the point in meditating? You see, that not in any way to criticize that at all, but it's deeply saddening. It means that we have ridden our meditation within this certainty of continuation, when all around us is the obviousness of its ending. And somehow we miss the point of it, or we just keep denying it. Meditation will allow you to deny as long as you want to deny. It doesn't break denial. We have to break denial. We have to be actually willing to see what's there. All it's doing is showing us what's there. Whether we look or not is up to us, you see. And like anything we do, therapy or anything, that no one can make you do it if you don't want to do it. You just shut down and it's over. You can't learn unless you want to learn. You can't grow unless you want to grow. And so meditation, if it's held within the certainty of our continuation, will continue that denial. And so when something erupts in our life, like a loss, whenever there's that sort of eruption and distortion and explosion, catharsis and fear, it's usually, almost always I think, because a defense mechanism has been broken through. Something that we didn't want to see, that we have been very defended against, has shown itself. And it shows itself with a momentum and a force that often implodes our motivation and the very reason that we're doing what we're doing. In this case, the person will say, what's the point? What's the point of meditating now that I see that things are dying? Never realizing that's where the Buddha started. That's where he said, wow, there's a problem here. I see the flaw. I'm not going to pretend that there isn't a flaw. It was a directive that has lasted 2,500 years for us to look and see if we can see the flaw up close from the beginning, not 10, 15 years down the line. And when we see that flaw, suddenly we either circle the wagons and continue to proclaim our denial. That happens quite often. And we can try to manage with the continuation of our certainty of living and continuation, and just say, oh, it was my father and he was 85. It's logical that he would die, but I'm safe. We can do that, many of us do. Or you can take this flaw to heart, that it's based within the way we perceive the world. The flaw is not a flaw that we can somehow navigate around. It's inherent in the way we perceive the world. If we invest in things for our identity, for our certainty, then we can be certain that death will take its toll. There's no escape for that. And we also can learn, if we're willing, you see, we have to have the courage. You have to be of the percentage of people that want to challenge yourself forward. Not the percentage that just wants to hunker down in a foxhole And again, I'm not in any way disparaging of either side of that issue. We all have the optimal timing when we can come out. But at some point, we have to see that we are creating, we are inflicting death upon ourselves. That this is a self-created flaw. Now that may be that's a little bit hard. So let me back up just a little bit on that, because this tradition takes its seat so firmly in what we call anicca, change, transition, flux. But flux was the starting point, not where you rest your laurels, not where you take your final resting place. It's the starting point. It gets you motivated to move to something that isn't changing. To move out of the range of experience, because experience is never going to cooperate with our intentions. And therefore, just to say, oh, anicca, oh, change, everything's changing, is just, it's a modification of the same paradigm we're in. It's not a change of paradigms. What change does, impermanence does, is that it flaws the paradigm we're in. So we no longer invest in the need to have that or want that paradigm as the basis for our life. We don't just rest in there and then try to accommodate change. Yes, now, in order to change paradigms, we can't fight the paradigm we're in. So there is a way in which the alignment to anicca and impermanence, relaxing ourselves to the change we see, ushers in this new paradigm. But most of us stay with anicca or impermanence as the direction the Buddha is meant and determined, the fruit. And it is not. It's to get us motivated so that we'll seek the fruit. Just feel it in your heart. Don't read books, including mine. Just feel it in your heart, because each one of us can move this thing in the direction in which we know there's a certainty within us. And if you get too far into the literature, especially in Buddhism, you'll feel the cobwebs. And it'll start freezing your mobility. It does. We have frozen these words that at one time were a delight. When he spoke, hundreds of people awoke from his speaking. And now we just make reference to what he really meant, and whether that's as good as, whether Jim is translating as well as Joe. I want the awakening. Let's go back and refresh this. Let's find out what this awakening is about. So the egoic state is the altered state. The state most of us are in, that we perceive from, the state of separation. That is a misperception of reality. That is the old paradigm. That is the paradigm that cannot sustain itself into the future. Not if we have any heart here. Not if we want this species to succeed. And so when we begin to see that the altered state is the one we're in, we begin to question it. And as you begin to question it, it draws you into its flaws. Before, when we weren't questioning it, you could whitewash the whole thing and say, well, the flaw happened to him, but I'm still protected. But when you're interested in correcting the shift of alienation that our heart has taken for generations, in which we don't recognize each other in union, then you want out. And you have to feel it as deeply as you grasped it before. It has to be proportional to the degree of your grasping before as your feeling of your urgency to leave it. And you begin to work this thing towards its advantage so that it could move us in a way that will free us from this misperception of life. And death is an excellent subject to move it. Why is it an excellent subject? Because it freaks out our old paradigm. When you get that kind of reactivity, you know it's valuable. You know, sometimes you can tell how true something is by how deep the reaction is against the truth in the other person, can't you? The amount of protest the other person is demonstrating against the truth, arguing against it, that comes because the person is seeing the truth. And because the truth is not something he or she wants to see, there's going to be enormous protest. Proportional to the amount of resistance we have to the truth will be the explosion of energy around that subject when it arises. Well, and this is where I think I'm flawed in my teaching, is that I just go for the big apple. I don't want to just dally around and spend time looking at little things. Just give me the story. Show me the mountain. Give me the fact, and I'll deal with it. And so when I was in Asia, I knew I had to work with the dying. I knew that I had to put my life at risk. And literally, I meant my egoic life at risk. Because this subject, I was in such protest that I knew the signs. I knew the signs were clear. And I also knew that the more I invested in the avoidance of death, the more I was also investing in my individuated life. That those two things were proportional to one another. Suddenly, I think I remember in Christianity sitting through numbing sermons and hearing the minister talk about Christ speaking about everlasting life. And I thought that was just incredible hyperbole, and it's just way too grand, just bring this thing down to practicality. But that's really, when you begin to look at death and you begin to see it for what it is, you realize that death has an ending. It has an ending. And what is ended, where does it drop you off? It's a dropping off place, right? You die. Things stop. And you realize that what stops is not life. It's all the forms that have been continually rising and passing away throughout life. All of the displays, all of the appearances. But life wasn't in those appearances. Those appearances were only held as appearances because I was seen in separative ways. So I invested life in those appearances from the way I perceived it. If I stopped perceiving it, life was a totality of everlasting totality. And it's just the forms that passed in and out. Well, that's meditation, really. When we sit in meditation, we are watching the forms. We just keep conceptualizing the forms down. We ratchet it down, but this is life's experience in its totality. What in microcosm of us sitting on our mat is life happening in totality. everything is arising and passing away. How can life be invested in those things that are just, they're like, there can't be any certainty, no guarantee. You can't invest in them. They're there one moment and they're not the next. But something else, you see, which doesn't arise and pass away. And the investment in the arising and passing away keeps me very tucked in to the paradigm of my separation and its accompanying violence and conflict. Right? Because if I take myself to be separate from you, and there's 7 billion of us on this planet, we have a lot of disturbance out there. We have a lot of annoyance, a lot of conflict, a lot of rub. 7 billion billiard balls on the same table. That's a lot of rub. But what if I was the table and just held the rolling balls? And we think, oh, what point is there in that? See, anything from this paradigm will be negated in the other paradigm, because you can't ever experience what that other paradigm is. All you can do is weigh in as a judgment. And since we have no experience of the other paradigm, it's always a negative and defensive judgment because we're trying to defend the paradigm we're in. All of our logic, all of our strategies, everything goes towards the protection of the altered consciousness that we are now in. So the Buddha throws this right at you. He says death. And he just lets it drop. The realization of it, going to the charnel grounds, as he puts it, beginning to see the decomposition as we're alive. It's like I'm on the Titanic. Do I want to go down with this ship? Is there some other place? Can I be the ocean? So I want to talk tonight, skipping many pages in between. What can I do? I want to talk about the transformation that we go through as we march this thing through the realization of death. It's a transformative process. It changes us. It changes us remarkably. And I know the subject well. My first book was on the topic. But I think we need to get a sense of its pathway, because it will throw you off the horse immediately if there's no preparation. And so, there are a series of phases of growth experiences when this topic is addressed. Those phases can be thought of more as a circular staircase rather than a linear changing, going from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. You'll go to phase 1 and you'll be often within that phase. It'll change many times. And then there'll be patterns and coming into phase 2, and yet the phase 3 will also be there. So as we begin to speak about this, don't think them as so much a linear set of direction as a kind of spiral staircase that takes you out of each phase as it ascends upward. When we take the subject on, when the realization happens, when the Buddha throws this word at us, there is the stage 1 I call the stage of self-preservation. The ego, and you can look at it from the altered state we're in, the flaw, right? Remember that the protest within the flaw is proportional to the to the energy of defensiveness. So when we take this thing on, and we're willing to take it on, and when I first visited the home of someone who was dying, I went down to Houston, and I was interviewing for a job down there, which I eventually got, but to see whether I was fit, which is a good thing, they took me out to a home with someone who was dying. It was not pretty, and they just wanted to see whether I could hold myself within that situation. So every cell in my body wanted to leave. And yet there is, at the same time, and it's hard to talk about, but I also knew it was absolutely the place I needed to be. I mean, if you tell me about an injury you've had, I will like, my body will go up, and I'm that way. So when you see somebody dying in front of you, with open wounds and all, I'm just like, but I stay the course on it. So this stage of self-preservation, egoically, is a contraction. The ego is contracting, like it's circling the wagons with such strength. It's protesting with such exclaim. The mind is trying to protect its own creation, which is itself. And it doesn't know how to do that except by creating a fear response to what it's seeing and hoping that you'll turn away from it sufficiently so it can go back to what it calls normal. And so out it comes. And it really is just something that you got to see. So, but again, in the right timing, in the readiness of the person to expose oneself to this subject, and people do it for a lot of different reasons. I was doing it because I wanted to understand it. Then you allow the flipping out. You don't try to do anything to it. You think sometimes you might be going crazy because it's just, it can't stand the thought of living with this reality. It's like, this is untenable. I have to leave the earth. It's the person that comes to me and says, what's the point? It takes you to that point. What's the point? Now, many people, when they get that degree of fear and contraction, they move to a belief system. Because the belief system says, I can't deny the fact that death is going to happen, but I'll have continuation of life after it happens, and so I'll project a heaven. I'll project a whatever it is. And so heaven is a way for us to continue without having to die once death has occurred. So it's a protection from that egoic flip out. Let's just look at it, right? Just see if this is true or not. That's why I have systematically sustained from any learning about the Bardo states. Because that's the Buddhist form of continuation. I want to know whether I'm up for the ending, not for the continue. I've already continued. I've been continuing all. I want to know what it. Okay, don't put anything next to that moment. Now what's that like? You feel some anxiety? Okay, so this sense of self-preservation, if you have enough courage, sincerity is another word, not white-knuckling, it's just, this is a flaw. And I don't know what the Buddha was feeling when he walked out of his castle and saw these things, but that is in all of us. Whatever he was feeling is also in you and I. And when that arises in you, it doesn't matter what the mind is doing or how the ego is strangling your life in that moment. It's okay. And so if there is the willingness to steady one's gait and posture through this, and this phase will circle back around in the circling staircase over and over again. Don't think you're going to get out of it by having one catharsis. This is whenever you sink back, whenever we sink back into the altered consciousness, that the first thing that's going to happen is fear. That's how the ego gets us within its control. So it's going to be a staircase for most of us. Okay, so then with some steadiness through that, not by trying to get over it, but just it starts, the ramparts start falling apart. They just don't, you just, see, this is just over time a little bit, and it just starts waning, the fear response. Just by staying steady in the subject, it starts. Okay, so then the next phase is universal death, the phase of universal death. And the phase of universal death is a very interesting one because this also, by the way, accompanies one's meditation, whether you're focused on death or dying per se or not. Whenever you are facing yourself and what you really are, these same phases go right on through. So the next phase, it's also the phase of going from self to selflessness. So you're not going to say, well, I'll get out of those phases by just changing subjects. If you take anything to its emptiness, these phases await you. It's better to do it while you're joined in a group. You know, I don't want to be out in Arizona alone somewhere on the desert doing it. It's just, that's what Sangha does. It provides companion for these phases. That's what the interdisciplinary team of a hospice is. It's like, we're all in this together. You know, it's dark out there. Let's all be in this together. Anyway, the second phase is the phase of universal death. The phase of universal death is when you've relaxed to the subject sufficiently that you see it everywhere. That there's no place it hides. There's no place that it is without. Now, this is also an egoic stage because the ego is making something very central to its theme of life. It's very important. When I was cast in this phase, it was like, this is the most important thing. You don't understand. I'd be on the phone with someone. You don't understand how important looking at death is. Nobody ever called me. And I was like, oh, you know, and if the patient didn't want to talk about death and dying, I did, you know. I said, don't you, you know, you're on a voyage to a mystery here, let's go. Anyway, I learned very quickly that wasn't how you handle it. But it's in you, you know, the excitement, and because the ego is blowing it out of proportion. Blowing it out of proportion. You see, it's another moment in time. But when it becomes the moment, something is seeing it, and still reacting to it. But there's a value to this universal because you really begin to bring in the subject into a realization mode. You begin to let it touch the cells of our body. We begin to actually feel the impact of its certainty. Not as a philosophy, not as something that's going to happen, but as something, my God, it's like oh, whoa. So awareness starts moving beyond its mental confinement. It was confined as a protection before, and now it's starting to move out in the form of acknowledgement of the universality of death. So you can feel the widening expanse of awareness, and at the same time your heart, our hearts also expand outward, and you start feeling the impact of pain at every level as you begin to view it, or are willing to view things that you up until this point have defended yourself against. I hope that sounds familiar to everyone in their meditation practice, because hopefully you're all experiencing that. Again, it doesn't have to be through the subject of death and dying. And so then, we start moving out, and when you realize everything is dying and the ego settles down with that fact, then we move into the next phase. Again, these phases are of multiple durations. You may be stuck in phase 2 for your entire life. I don't know. Is the phase of letting be. Now we're no longer trying to fight this thing, but we're seeing it as part of, as an intricate expression of. That the need to fight it is gone at this phase. There's no need to fixate on it either. It's just, in hospice, the way it's stated, although few people really have realized that level, is that death is a part of life. Completely. Just a complete part of life. That it's never an emergency. There may be urgency in relationship to someone dying, but it's never an emergency because it's expected. And so too is ours. And accompanying that is also the realization that there isn't anything worth holding on to, because it's all dying. Through that universality of death has imparted the wisdom of the letting be, letting life be, not releasing, not throwing it away, not turning our back on it. It's just letting it be now. Just beginning to, you can feel yourself starting to fold into the mix rather than being outside in our protective cocoon. As this thing widens, as we allow ourselves to relax, we come into the mix of it. We come into the life and death moment of it. And that letting be still has an egoic presence. There's still a sense of fear and hope in there that plays forth in time. There is less fear of time, which is why I read the poem tonight. There's less, there's more of an abiding. Even if you're in a traffic jam, you need to be somewhere, you are where you need to be. I don't know how to say it so that you don't, up until that point, we were never where we needed to be. And most of our life is defined not by where we are, but where we need to be. And suddenly, you don't need to be anywhere. And that's what I mean by time loosening its hold on us. It just, where's life happening? It just doesn't make any sense anymore to keep configuring ourselves out of any coordinate other than what is present. There's a story I love. There's a story of an Alzheimer's patient who had Alzheimer's disease for the last 12 years of his life. He was staying with, he had his wife of some 60-some years, and his grown children were visiting his house at the time, 2 grown sons. And he was watching television with his grown sons. His wife was in the kitchen, and he has a heart attack. And he drops over. And a son goes to his side, rolls him over. The other son says, "I'll go find mother." No, I'll call the ambulance. That's what he says. I'm going to call the ambulance. And the man, with clarity that had not been heard by his sons for 10, 12 years, says to the son who is going to go off and call the ambulance, "No, don't call the ambulance. Go Go tell your mother I love her. And then he dies. That's where you need to be, right? That's where this species needs to be. We can't keep doing this, people. So, I'm moving rather fast through these. Each one of these could be a series of talks in themselves. But I want to take us to the last phase. I want us to understand the final resolution, to see how death and selflessness are actually one and the same. Because the next phase, because when one begins to feel the less pressures of time, when one begins to feel the universality of one's condition, when one's heart begins to open beyond the contracted and concentric way that it has been held, when it begins to loosen the awareness strings, the drawstrings of where awareness has been, when it begins to flood humanity, and there is still this commentator that follows that opening, then one turns to the final death. Who am I? What is this? Who dies? What is death? These are all perceptions of the same question, of the same investigation, of the same energy of the heart that uproots its final identification. What is this thing? For with that very subtle identification that remains for many of us, perhaps for our whole duration of practice, that's the thing that can still die. That's where the worry still lies. That's where the deaths can still create the fear. That's the part that hasn't been fully realized, so that it has no more boundaries. And the heart turns to this. The heart then turns to this final question with a pause. And moves ahead. Calming the seas for the first time. Changing paradigms for the first time. So may it happen to all. Can we sit for a minute or two?
मैं संक्षेप में इनके आज के देशना का सारांश बता देता हूँ। शुरू में उन्होंने बुक साइनिंग की बात की थी, तो उनकी कई बुक्स हैं जो उन्होंने लिखी हैं, लेकिन इस प्रवचन सीरीज़ के बाद उन्होंने एक बुक लिखी है जो अभी कुछ वर्ष पहले शायद आई है। उसका टाइटल है टचिंग द इन्फानाइट, जो सती पठान के आधार पे लिखी गई है। तो उसकी वो अभी यहाँ पे ई बुक फॉर्म में अवेलेबल है अमेज़न पे, वैसे हार्ड कॉपी अवेलेबल नहीं है। तो जो चाहें तो उसको पढ़ सकते हैं, उससे ये जो टॉक्स हैं उनका संदर्भ शायद और क्लियर होगा। तो बेसिक बात वही उनकी चल रही थी जो पिछले सभी सत्रों में आ रही है कि किस तरह से आत्मभाव से अनात्म भाव की ओर बढ़ा जाए और किस तरह से हम लोग साधना जो करते हैं वो पुराने पैराडाइम में ही मैं और मेरे के भाव से करते रहते हैं, तो उसमें हमें लाभ होता है कि अपने पर्सनालिटी इम्प्रूव हो जाती है, सेल्फ इम्प्रूव हो जाती है, लेकिन जो भगवान की टीचिंग का मुख्य उद्देश्य था वो पूरा नहीं होता। बेसिकली वो बात कर रहे थे जो मैं रेडिकल शिफ्ट होना चाहिए वो नहीं होता। तो उन्होंने बताया कि इस सूत्र में जैसे आगे प्रतिकूल मानसिकार पब्बम है जिसमें शरीर की ब्यूटी को हटाने के लिए वो उसके रिपल्सिव आस्पेक्ट दिखाए जाते हैं, और फिर अंततः मृत्यु के बारे में आपने देखा 9 का पब्बम 9 तरह के 9 सेक्शन है सिमेट्री कॉन्टेम्पलेशंस के। तो जो कायानुपशना का सबसे बड़ा पोर्शन डेथ के ऊपर ही है, कितने कि बेसिकली डिफरेंट स्टेजेस जो हैं हमारे शरीर के डिग्रेडेशन के। तो उन्होंने बताया कि ये बेसिक इसलिए दिया गया है ताकि हम अपना पैराडाइम चेंज कर सकते हैं, अपना सोचने का तरीका बदल दें। उन्होंने कहा कि जो भगवान जब निकले थे अपने महल से, जब वो राजकुमार सिद्धार्थ, तब भी उनको उसी समय डेथ का रियलाइजेशन हो गया था कि ये जो है एक हमारे परसेप्शन जो नॉर्मल परसेप्शन है उसमें एक फ्लॉ है कि एक डेथ है, हमें इसको देखना चाहिए, हाउ टू रियली अंडरस्टैंड एंड गेट आउट ऑफ इट। तो उन्होंने एक उदाहरण दिया एक का कि जब उनके एक निकट संबंधियों की डेथ हो गई तो उन्होंने ध्यान करना छोड़ दिया। अब क्या ध्यान करने का क्या फ़ायदा है? तो उन्होंने बताया कि ये एक्चुअली तो ध्यान करने का फ़ायदा यही है कि जो रियलिटी ऑफ डेथ है उसको हम ठीक से समझ पाएँ। डेथ कोई फ्लॉ नहीं है नेचर में, बट ये नेचर का पार्ट है, उसको हम समझ नहीं पाते क्योंकि पुराने पैराडाइम में जब हम आत्मभाव रहता है, शरीर के साथ तादात्म्य रहता है, तो डेथ एक बहुत भारी झटका लगता है। तो इसलिए अगर हम डेथ को ठीक से समझें तो उससे जो साधना है हमारी हमको डेथलेस की तरफ ले जाएगी। उन्होंने कहा कि जो साधना में जो हम अनित्य को इतना महत्व देते हैं तो कई बार हम उसी अनित्य में ही रुके रह जाते हैं। आगे कि कोई नित्य भी है, कोई अनबॉर्न अनकंडीशन जैसे अजान सुमित वगैरह बताते हैं, वो भी है, उसके बारे में चर्चा नहीं करते। तो उन्होंने फिर डेथ के बारे में अपने अनुभव बताए, क्योंकि ये जब मॉन्क से गृहस्थ लोग आश्रम में आए तो इन्होंने हॉस्पिस में काम किया जहाँ पे मरने वाले लोग रहते हैं और जो टर्मिनली इल होते हैं उनके साथ इन्होंने काम किया है। तो वहीं रहे उस हॉस्पिस में, पहले धीरे धीरे बढ़ गए, उस हॉस्पिस के डायरेक्टर बने थे। कई वर्षों तक उन्होंने काम किया, उसके ऊपर किताब भी लिखी है डेथ एंड डाइंग पे। तो उसके आधार पे उन्होंने आज की कुछ बातें बताई हमें। वो पहले तो वही चर्चा की, भगवान जो है हमको कहते हैं चार्नल ग्राउंड में जाओ, डिकम्पोजिशन देखो शरीर का। वो इसलिए कहते हैं कि हम मृत्यु के सत्य को समझें। उसके बाद जो इन्होंने स्टेज 1 2 3 बात कही, हो सकता है आपको भी मेरी तरह लगा हो कि ये कोई इसमें कोई बात है ही नहीं। वो दिक्कत ये है कि वो पाश्चात्य देशों में बात कर रहे हैं जहाँ पे डेथ को छुपा के रखा जाता है। भारत की तरह नहीं कि जो हम घर के अंदर ही सब कुछ होता है और घर में ही बूढ़े बड़े जो हैं प्राण त्यागते हैं और सबके सामने ही ऐसा होता है। तो वहाँ पे ऐसा परिवेश नहीं है, तो इसलिए वहाँ के लोगों को उनके विचार से मृत्यु के बारे में काफ़ी भय रहता है। तो उन्होंने जो स्टेज बताई, पहला स्टेज कि भाई भय लगता है, अगर हम मृत्यु को जानते हैं, समझने की कोशिश करते हैं, वहाँ से भागने की कोशिश करते हैं और किसी तरह से हम विश्वास पे आधार करते हैं कि हाँ एक हेवन है तो हम वहाँ जाके हेवन में सुख से रह लेंगे। तो फिर जब तक इस भय के बारे में, जब तक इस भय को हम समझते नहीं और धीरे धीरे एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते, तब फिर दूसरी स्टेज आती है कि हम समझते हैं कि सभी लोग मरते हैं। और फिर जब जैसा लगता है सभी लोग मरते हैं तो कुछ थोड़ी हृदय में एक्सेप्टेंस बढ़ती है, और ज़्यादा एक्सेप्टेंस बढ़ती है तो फिर हम समझते हैं कि मृत्यु जो है जीवन का पार्ट है। मुझे नहीं लगता भारतवर्ष में किसी को इस बारे में कोई दिक्कत होगी समझने में कि मृत्यु हमारे जीवन का पार्ट है। हाँ, जो आगे की बात है कि वो उसके प्रति जो लड़ाई करने का भाव है वो कि हम वो कम होए और भय कम हो जाए मृत्यु का, वो बात महत्वपूर्ण बात है। तो कहते अगर सचमुच में इसको हम ठीक से समझ जाएं और देखें तो समझ में आता है कि किसी भी चीज़ को सब प्रति हमें संग्रह करने की आवश्यकता नहीं है, किसी देयर इज़ नथिंग वर्थ होल्डिंग, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली सब कुछ यहीं छोड़ के जाना है। तो इसलिए इससे वो ये सचमुच में अगर ये बात हमारी समझ में आ जाए तो हम प्रेजेंट मोमेंट में रहना शुरू कर देते हैं, जिसे आप थाई फॉरेस्ट ट्रेडिशन वाले लोग जैसे कहते हैं ना, रेडिकल एक्सेप्टेंस ऑफ द प्रेजेंट, की जो भी वस्तु परिस्थिति है उसको टोटली एक्सेप्ट करते हैं। जिसमें अजान अमरो अजान सुमेधो इस बात पे बहुत चर्चा करते रहते हैं। तो उन्होंने उदाहरण दिया एक बूढ़े आदमी का जो कोई अल्जीमेर से पीड़ित था, और जब उसकी बैठा हुआ था, सब परिवार वाले भी थे, उसको हार्ट अटैक हुआ, तो उनके एक बेटे ने कहा कि मैं एम्बुलेंस बुलाता हूँ, तो उसने कहा कि नहीं एम्बुलेंस नहीं, अपनी माँ को बुलाओ, और वो प्राण त्याग दिए। तो उनको लगता कि ये बहुत सुखद मृत्यु रही उनकी, कि वो घबराए नहीं। और चौथा स्टेज जो बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है, कि जिससे कि हम समझते हैं कि जो मृत्यु है और जो अनात्म भाव है वो एक ही चीज़ है, क्योंकि जब जो मृत्यु होती है वो आत्म भाव की मृत्यु होती है, और वो साधक को साधना करते करते सचमुच में महसूस होने लगता है कि आत्म भाव की मृत्यु होगी। तो फिर वो अंततः इस तरह के प्रश्न जब उठते हैं कि कौन मर रहा है, मृत्यु है क्या, तो समझ में आने लगता है कि कोई मर नहीं रहा। बेसिकली जहाँ हमने अपने गलत सोच के कारण हमने शरीर को मैं समझ रखा था, वो हमारी गलत सोच जो है उसके कारण हमको लगता है कि मैं मर रहा हूँ, वरना तो जीवन एक है और उसके नाना रूप जो हैं वो प्रकट हो रहे हैं। जीवन कभी मरता नहीं, शरीर ही मरता है। और जब इस तरह की बात समझ में आती है तब जाके हमें आत्मभाव जो है पुष्ट होता है। ये संक्षेप में उनकी आज की प्रवचन का सारांश था। ब्रह्म विहारों का अभ्यास करेंगे, 1 मिनट थोड़ी देर शांत बैठ जाते हैं। पहले मैत्री ब्रह्म विहार, सर्वप्रथम रोज़ की भांति अपने प्रति, प्रियजनों के प्रति, फिर रक्षा करने वाले देवताओं के प्रति, और अंत में समस्त प्राणियों के प्रति, जो मैत्री का मूल स्वरूप है। अपने प्रति ये तीनों जो स्टेप हैं इसलिए कि आगे सचमुच में हृदय में मैत्री का भाव प्रस्फुटित हो और हम ठीक से मंगल मैत्री का भाव अभ्यास कर सकें। सबसे पहले अपने प्रति कोई चिंता हो, कोई मन में रहती है, कोई आशंका है, कोई भय है, कोई द्वेष है, तो उसको याद करके शुभेच्छा करते हैं कि हम उससे मुक्त हों। अहं वेदोमि अव्यापज्योमि अनिगोमि सुखी अत्तानं परिहरामि। आप अपने प्रियजनों को याद कर सकते हैं, मन में उनकी इमेज ला सकते हैं, और फिर यही शब्द उनके लिए भी प्रयोग कर सकते हैं मन ही मन में, और अंत में हम बोलेंगे सबके लिए। माता पितु आचार्य च ज्ञातिमित्ता च स ब्रह्मचारिणो च अविराहोऽन्तु अव्यापज्याहोऽन्तु अनिगाहोऽन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। आरक्षा देवता भूमट्ठा देवता रुक्षट्ठा देवता आकाशट्ठा देवता अविराहोऽन्तु अव्यापज्याहोऽन्तु अनिगाहोऽन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। अब असीम अपरिमित प्रज्ञा मैत्री भाव सभी प्राणियों के प्रति, चाहे हम देख पा रहे हों या नहीं देख पा रहे हों, सूक्ष्म हों स्थूल हों, किसी भी लोक में हों, धरती पे चलने वाले हों, पानी में चलने वाले हों, आकाश में चलने वाले हों, 2 पैर वाले हों, 4 पैर वाले हों, बहुत सारे पैर वाले हों या बगैर पैर के हों, सभी के प्रति अनंत मैत्री। सर्वे सत्ता सर्वे पाना सर्वे भूता सर्वे पुंगला सर्वे अत्ता भाव पर्यापन्ना सर्वा इत्यो सर्वे पुरुषा सर्वे अरिया सर्वे अनरिया सर्वे देवा सर्वे मनुष्या सर्वे विनिपातिका अविराहोऽन्तु अव्यापज्याहोऽन्तु अनिगाहोऽन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। अब करुणा ब्रह्म विहार। इस विषम परिस्थिति में असंख्य प्राणी बीमार, महामारी के कारण पीड़ित, दुखी, इस सभी दुख से निकल पाएं, ऐसी शुभकामना। हम लोग भी सब बंधे हुए हैं, कुछ भी करने में सक्षम नहीं, तो ऐसी परिस्थिति में श्रद्धा के बल से सभी बुद्धों के सिद्धि बल की आवाहन करते हैं कि वे सब अपनी सिद्धि के प्रभाव से उन सबकी असीमित करुणा के प्रभाव से सभी प्राणियों के दुख दूर हो। तो उसके लिए ये चैंटिंग है वो करते हैं थोड़ी देर। वचसा मनसा चैव वन्दामे ते तथागते शयने आसने ठाने गमने चापि सर्वदा सदा सुखेन रक्षन्तु बुद्धा सन्ति करातुवं ते हि त्वं रक्षितो सन्तो मुक्तो सर्वभयेन च सर्वरोगविनिमुक्तो सर्वसन्तापवर्जितो सर्वसेरमतिकन्तो निब्बुतो च त्वं भव तेषां सच्चेन शीलेन खन्तिमेता बलेन च तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। पुरस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति भूता महीद्विका तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। दक्षिणस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति देवा महीद्विका तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। पश्चिमस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति नागा महीद्विका तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। उत्तरस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति यक्षा महीद्विका तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। पुरं दिशं दतरट्ठो दक्षिणेन विरुल्लको पश्चिमेन विरूपको कुबेरोत्तरं दिशं चत्तारो ते महाराजा लोकपालाय यशस्विनो तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। आकाशट्ठा च भूमट्ठा देवा नागा महीद्विका तेऽपि तुम्हें अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। सब्बीतियो विभज्यन्तु सर्वरोगो विनश्यतु माते भवतान्तरायो सुखी दीर्घायुको भव। हम कृतज्ञता ज्ञापन सबके प्रति जो इतनी विषम परिस्थिति में अपनी सुरक्षा दांव पे लगा के सेवा कार्यों में लगे हैं, सभी के प्रति आभार, कृतज्ञता, धन्यवाद। सभी सुरक्षित रहें, स्वस्थ रहें, उनके काम में कोई बाधा ना आए, ऐसी शुभकामना। तो आए हम सब अपने पुण्य उनके साथ साझा करें। जो भी पुण्य हमने आज तक किए हैं उन सब में वे सभी भागीदार हों। पुण्यस्य इदानि याना अन्यानि कतानि मे ते सञ्च भागिनो हन्तु सत्तानन्तपमानका। मुदिता ब्रह्म विहार मन को प्रफुल्लित करने के लिए जो भी बात हमें प्रसन्न करती हो उसको याद कर सकते हैं। किसी भी प्रकार की जो कुशल चित्त से प्रसन्न करती हो। हजारों लोग रोग से मुक्त होके स्वस्थ हो रहे हैं, अपने घरों में स्वास्थ्य लाभ कर रहे हैं। उनकी प्रसन्नता को जान के हम भी प्रसन्न हो सकते हैं। या और कोई बात जो पर्सनली हमें मालूम हो जिससे हमें प्रसन्नता मिलती हो, उसको याद करके मन में प्रसन्नता जगा सकते हैं। ये बहुत आवश्यक है, क्योंकि चित्त प्रसन्न होगा तभी धर्म में आगे बढ़ पाएंगे। सभी की प्रसन्नता बनी रहे, कोई व्यवधान ना आए, जो भी सुख संपत्ति है लोगों के पास, जो प्रसन्न है वो उनकी सुख संपत्ति बनी रहे। यथा नंदा संपत्ति तो मां विगच्छन्तु। और अंत में उपेक्षा ब्रह्म विहार। हर परिस्थिति में लोक धर्मों के स्पर्श से हमारा चित्त कंपायमान न हो, बहुत आवश्यक। और बाकी तीनों ब्रह्म विहारों को ठीक से करने के लिए भी समता का साथ रहना, उपेक्षा का साथ रहना आवश्यक। यदि आप ठीक से देखें तो पहले तीनों ब्रह्म विहार मैत्री का ही स्वरूप है, एक सद्भावना के ही स्वरूप हैं, एक अपरिमित सद्भावना सभी के प्रति, जो दुखी हैं उनके प्रति सद्भावना जो है करुणा का रूप लेती है, जो सुखी हैं उनके प्रति सद्भावना मुदिता का रूप लेती है। उपेक्षा इन सब में अलग, हर तीनों को कंट्रोल करके संयमित करने के लिए। इसलिए बोधि का अंग प्रज्ञा के आधार पे ही मुदिता डेवलप हो सकती है। अनित्य बोध के आधार पर चित्त शांत होता है, कर्म सिद्धांत के आधार पर, चार आर्य सत्यों के आधार पर। तो जो लोकीय सम्यक दृष्टि है, चार सम्यक दृष्टि है, कर्म सिद्धांत बहुत महत्वपूर्ण इस मामले में उपेक्षा बनाए रखने के लिए, ताकि दुख को देख के हम दुखी ना हो, दूसरों पे दोषारोपण न करें। आए कर्म सिद्धांत को याद करें एक बार फिर। कम्मस्य का कम्मदायादा कम्मयोनि कम्मबन्धु कम्मपटिसरण यं कम्मं करिष्यन्ति कल्याणं वा पापकं वा सदायादा भविष्यन्ति। और लोकोत्तर सम्मादिट्ठी के लिए हरि सच्चान अवेच्च पश्यति, हम सभी प्राणी सत्य दुख के सही कारण को समझ सकें, दुख को समझ सकें और तृष्णा को छोड़ सकें, ऐसी शुभकामना सभी के लिए, अपने लिए। तो तभी सचमुच में सुख प्राप्त होगा। तो इन गाथा के रूप में इसको प्रकट करते हैं। सर्वे सत्ता सुखी होन्तु, सर्वे होन्तु च खेमिनो, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा किञ्चित् पापमागमा, मा किञ्चित् शोकमागमा, मा किञ्चित् दुःखमागमा। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं, रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता, सर्वबुद्धानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु मे। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं, रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता, सर्वधर्मानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं, रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता, सर्वसङ्घानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। सम्मा सम्बुद्धो भगवा बुद्धं भगवन्तं अभिवादि स्वागतो भगवता धम्मो धम्मं सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो संघं नमामि।